Let's draw back together. These study days, they do study day, for those who are quite new to the diocese, the sort of pattern for quite a number of years now is this was a gathering point in during Lent, a kind of study day, some different themes, different venues, meeting together, and then the diocesan conference in usually the end of September, early October, for a couple of days, which is also open to many of our lay leaders as well. Those are sort of two fixed points where we get to sort of come together, and then of course the Chrism Eucharist in Holy Week. And so looking around, I realise I've already picked out some people who are really very new to the diocese here at their first occasion where they're gathering like this, and plenty of old timers as well. So, which is why it's great to see conversations going on, because I think that's part of the blessing of meeting like this, isn't it? That we do get just to meet, particularly to welcome those who are very new to the diocese. So if you are here and you're looking around thinking everyone looks like they know each other really well, well, some people do, but there's also plenty of people like you who over the last few years have come to their first occasion like this. And do just introduce yourself to people. Let's look out and look around for those who do look as though they might be new. We've not met them before. But one person many of you will have met, or at least heard speak for, is Lucy Moore. And I did say to Bishop Anna, I would really love to have the opportunity to introduce Lucy, and perfectly capable of doing that. But actually, you get those moments where, and I know that one or two of you probably do this at these occasions when we come together, and you look across the other side of the room, and actually there's someone here, and you're doing things now that you could never have imagined that you would be doing, and there's someone you knew 30 years ago, and God was at work at that time in a particular way, and now you're looking at what God has done in the meantime, and you're just amazed and puzzled and delighted. And I kind of feel like that seeing Lucy here today, and whenever I see Lucy's work, because we first met 33 years ago, and it's kind of on topic really, because I became the youth leader of a church in Oxford, and Lucy and her husband Paul were already part of that congregation. Paul was a curate there, his first curacy, and Lucy and Paul were part of the youth team that I got to lead, and it was an amazing team. Lots of stories I could tell, but I won't do that now. We'll kind of keep those. I'll leave this for Lucy to tell you about. But it was an amazing time, and so much that I learned about team. Perhaps most importantly, working with a really great group of people to develop what was an already existing youth ministry that had been really fruitful and effective over quite a number of years. And sometimes that's a big pressure when you get appointed to help lead and develop it, because you're kind of thinking, oh my goodness, how do you keep that fresh and growing? Because of course, if you're working in the area of children and youth, the generations are coming and going quite quickly, and you're forever having to refresh and regrow and redevelop that work. But it was a real privilege to be part of that 33 years ago. I was kind of having to count it up earlier, Lucy. And then to watch how God has used you and Paul over these past 33 years, taking you to different parts of the country to serve in local churches, in your national work, pioneering the Messy Church ministry, which is just extraordinary, and has been a great blessing to quite a number of churches here who have used those resources and learned and grown a really important work. And was obviously with Bible reading fellowship, wasn't it, that you then worked and developed that work further. And now, head, is that right, of or lead on Growing Faith Foundation, a national role in an area that it seems to me it's kind of one of the absolutely essential front lines that God has given us. This relationship between the schools, a key part of the church's engagement in mission, the local church, home, family. We're excited about some of the things we're seeing happening in the diocese at the moment in all kinds of ways, as Andy's touched on. But we know that you come with insight, experience, but also that ability to integrate and join on what God is doing around the country in this area and help us to grow it further. So thank you for all that you bring to that. We thank God for calling you into this national role. We're glad that you're kind of a near neighbour now, because you're just over the border in the Derby diocese, so it hasn't had quite so far to come, where Paul is the incumbent of a group of churches there. But thank you for spending time with us today. We're a friendly bunch, I promise. But we're also eager to learn and to grow and develop in this area. And I know that you'll bring ideas, thoughts, and maybe even to kind of probe and prompt us to think more deeply about how we can see God at work in fresh ways. So thank you, Lucy. Thanks for all you've done since we last got to properly be involved in something together 33 years ago, and the journey that we've been on, and the journey that all of us here in different ways will be reflecting on as we think about children, families, young people through what we're doing today. So can we give a very warm welcome to Lucy Ward.
Terrifying build-up. I'm so sorry that the rest of the day is going to be a complete letdown. It's a delight to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me today. Real privilege to be here. And I have to get over my my prejudices. It's not prejudices, my terrors of the past. Because in Messy Church days, when I was invited to talk to clergy, they were always the most terrifying days, because some of the clergy would be on board with Messy Church, but of course it was early days, and there was so much suspicion, and of course clergy have been trained in a different way, and were very nervous about this weird thing coming in that was Messy Church. So I always kind of looked forward to clergy days with fear and trepidation. But you look very friendly, so I'm sure it's all fine today. It's great to be here and to have this this subject to talk about. And some people ask me why. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but not through me.
Can you? Oh dear. No. We will overcome. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Okay. If you can't hear me, if it slips or my jumper falls off or something, just stick your hands behind your ears. And some people say, why did you change jobs? Were you not happy with Messy Church? What's going on? And what it was that I got to a weird point in the ministry of Messy Church where I'd kind of taken it to the point it was, or sort of more like water skiing behind God to the point where it was. And then this job in the Church of England was advertised, and the word that made me stop and say, "Ooh, maybe," was the strapline, "This is a game changer of a job." A game changer. And I thought, oh my word, what if we could work together to change the game around children and young people? Working from Messy Church was always from grassroots up, working at parish level, working, going and speaking to a tiny group of people in a parish in the far-flung Norfolk, with 3 people and half a dog, and helping change the world there. What if we could actually embed that game-changingness in the structures of the Church of England? What might that be like? What could we do together? So that's what made me go for the job in the first place. Whether we can change the game remains to be seen. I've only been doing it a year, so I have no idea. It's huge fun. I'm meeting some amazing people. And much to my surprise, I thought that working in the National Church, I was going to come across a lot of kind of paper pushers and bureaucrats and people who enjoy spreadsheets. Nothing wrong with that, but you know, that was all they enjoyed. What I found is people who are utterly sold out on God, who love Jesus Christ, who want the church to flourish and grow because they think that the Church of England is a place where God works. A group of people who, like the van that was outside a minute ago with the cherry picker, it's got site solutions on the side of it, that the church is the site solution in the parishes of the country. And it's just wonderful to work with people who've got this faith and hope. So I would encourage you that the National Church is actually full of really good people, in my experience, who really want the kingdom of God to grow. And bureaucracy is kind of a long way down the list. Anyway, I blither. What are we doing today? I thought, there's so much going on in Sutherland Notts. It's just such a buzzy place. I thought what I would just do is a little bit about the flourishing of children and young people from the Bible, and then think about the situation that we're in, what growing faith is, and what we're doing at a national level, so that you can see how what you're doing where it really matters at parish level can be amplified and supported by the sort of movement to God in the national level. So I hope that works. And then in the bit after coffee, I'm going to, I keep adding bits to it, I'm so sorry, Bishop Andy, I'm wherever you are. It started off with 3 pieces of research, which I think are really interesting and helpful as we think about children and young people and families in parishes. And it's grown, there are more. So we'll have to, we'll work that through. So, right, a picture. I hope you can see that at the back. But just turn to the person next to you and what can you see in the picture? Which story do you think it's trying to represent? Jesus at the temple. Yes, one of the many Jesuses at the temple. But this is when he was 12 years old. And it's the account from Luke. And if you remember, it's the safeguarding and risk assessment nightmare story. Jesus, age of 12, goes up with the village and his parents and everybody and his uncles and aunts and everyone. They go up to Jerusalem for the Passover festival, have a fabulous time, and the village comes home again, and after a day, Mary and Joseph notice that Jesus isn't actually with Auntie Ethel and Uncle George. He's not there. And they scuttle back to Jerusalem and spend 3 days. 3 days and 3 nights. It's just doesn't bear thinking about, is it? 3 days and 3 nights looking for him until finally they go to the temple and see Jesus there with the temple elders, and who are kind of talking, asking questions, listening to Jesus' responses. Jesus is asking them questions, and they're gobsmacked by what's going on. And this is after 3 days. So this is quite a long time with this 12-year-old. And Mary sort of tears her hair out and says, what have you done? Why have you done this? And Jesus just goes, didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? Which, as a parent, Mary took these things away and treasured them in her heart. Also, but there's a brilliant bit at the end of that passage, which I think is really interesting. It says, then he, Jesus, went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favour with God and people. I'll just read that last sentence again. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favour with God and people. Do you think that is a fabulous vision for how we want every single child and young person to grow up healthy and strong, physically kind of, physically well, healthy and well, and in favour with God, so in a great connected relationship with God and with the people around him. What an amazing wholeness of life Jesus had. And what I'd love you to discuss, and I realise that you are like these very engaged classes that I used to teach at school, where it was why I gave up teaching in the end, because I would stand at the front of the class and go, can we move on now? Could you stop talking now? Could we, and you'd give up in the end. But I have a microphone. I will hold on to that. So about just 3 minutes, if that, 2 to 3 minutes, just to talk to the person next to you with this question. You know the story back to front. It's in Luke 2 if you want to have it open in front of you. What factors in this account show a community where the faith of children and young people is nurtured? So looking at that short account from Luke, what factors do you see that show a community where the faith of children and young people is nurtured? It's just, let's say 2 minutes to chat about that for the person next. It's a bit tricky in this environment to call out answers, so see if these resonate with any that you were talking about on your tables. So what sort of things could we imagine that helped Jesus as a young person to thrive? I think what we've got is a safe, thank goodness, intergenerational community. The assumption was, wasn't it, that somebody was looking after Jesus, that he was hanging out with some responsible adult. So the norm would be this safe intergenerational community. And one thing that I think is coming through over and over again in everything that I'm reading, in the research that's happening at the moment, the direction of travel, if you like, as a country, as the Church of England certainly, is that we are gradually coming to an understanding that intergenerational church in all its forms is the kind of the thing to aspire to. The hardest thing in the world to do, really hard to do well. But in an intergenerational community, I'm not just talking about the Sunday gathered worship, but a community that's safe, absolutely, but consists of people of all ages. One of my most formative moments, though you probably never knew it, was when we were talking at CPAS years ago about intergenerational worship. And a guy from Scripture Union said, now I'm in my 60s, he may even have been older, he said, I now need people of an older generation who are Christians, who've gone before me, to tell me how to get ready to die. Don't you think that's interesting? there was this sort of understanding that we need people around us at all different levels of life, of faith, of experience. We need to remember what it's like to be a child. Otherwise, how can we enter the kingdom of heaven like a child? How can we do discipleship at all if we don't ever meet any children? I'm reminded of this daily because we've got this Ukrainian family staying with us at the moment. They had a baby a fortnight after arriving in the UK, which was huge fun on the vocabulary front. And she's now 7 months old, 7 or 8 months old, and the creativity of this child with a spatula is just, she's pre-verbal, she just burbles, goodness knows what's going on in her head, but the creativity that I see that is a God thing, what she can do with a spatula, how she treats it, how she handles it, how she explores it, the way she sees infinite possibilities in this wooden spatula. It's, it just reminds me of something that I had lost. I don't spend much of my time with spatulas, so community where family is key, strong families, whatever that family looks like. I'm not talking about 2 parents and a dog and so on. The whole different gamut of families. What can we do as churches to strengthen those families, to support those families, to prioritise those families? And one of the pieces of research, which I hope you'll have time to glance at this afternoon, talks about what churches think they do for families and how the families really want to be supported. A community with rhythms and seasons. How important was it for that village to go up to the big city once a year, or probably more? They seem to spend all their time going to festivals, but with a community with rhythms, so that those rhythms and seasons were built into Jesus' knowledge of how the world works, how God works, that there were high days and holidays, and there were ploddy times as well. What a wonderful rhythm to build into a child's life. And we can do that, and we do that. How can we build on that even more? A community space for listening, questioning, answering. Another thing that's coming out from a lot of the research of the Growing Faith Foundation has initiated is how much children actually want and need space, and that's what they're valuing. And yes, there's a place for the kind of high-level, high-octane entertainment, kind of all-engaging worship, the action songs and so on. But what they're saying that they want and need is space and reflection time and people who will really listen to them. And we can do that. We're good at that in churches. We've got people with the time to sit and listen to our young people and respond to them appropriately. So here we have Jesus in the temple with those people who didn't sort of say, oh, you're 12 years old, you have nothing to say. They sat with him for 3 days. And I wonder if they were fed up with him by that stage, and just so glad to see Mary, or whether they could have gone on for a week. I don't know. Lots of different things. A community of different interlinking structures working together. So you've got the local level, the local people going up together to the big city. You've got the big city putting on the big festival that only the big city could do. That's quite an exciting sort of dynamic, isn't it? People, each community working together to give what they can. We've got quite a good setup for that in the Church of England, haven't we? With the parish being vital, we've got deaneries, we've got dioceses, we've got national. We can do things, different things, at different levels that complement each other. And appreciating each other's skills, I think, is a vital part of this. A community of child's spirituality is already flourishing. Jesus was alive to God. He was alive with questions and awe and wonder, and he had questions to bring. He had answers to bring. He learned a lot of stuff before he went up to Jerusalem. There was something going on in Nazareth, wasn't there, in those 12 years? Perhaps learned from his family, perhaps learned from, I don't know, did they have a synagogue in Nazareth? I have no idea. But the faith of the local people and his relationship with God was nurtured, happening already there. That's what can we do in this secular world that we live in, and an increasingly secular world, to really build communities where children's spirituality is valued. There was a really sound piece of insight from Rebecca Nye's research, which was that as early as the age of 8, children learnt to be ashamed of their spirituality. Don't you think that's really sad? I think it's really sad that children started hiding the spiritual, their openness to the spiritual side of life from as early as 8, and that's really tragic. I will gather through a community where a child can flourish physically, cognitively, relationally, to become the adult capable of fulfilling their calling. Jesus, of course, had a calling as an adult. What are our children's callings? How can we help them become the people that they need to be in this world, to work with those around them, with their God, to transform the world, to follow their calling? Can we keep that vision so that children in our churches aren't that noisy person in the corner that we need to shove a colouring sheet in front of to shut them up, but instead they become people who are able to change the world, people who can transform the world, people who can be transformed themselves, if we help get them into that place. Someone was talking yesterday about starting a creche in their church, and they started from the point of view of, but we don't have enough volunteers to run a creche, and it went on a bit of a journey around, gosh, if we envisioned people in our church to say, this isn't about keeping the children quiet so the adults can listen to the sermon, this is about transforming the life of a child, giving them the best chance of becoming the person God wants them to be, by just having that hour a week with them. What can we do to help grow this child in their faith? Then they ended up with people queuing up to join the creche rota, because it was about transformation, it was about that vision. And a community where adults learn with and from children. How exciting is that? The whole discipleship journey that we are on together. That yes, children will learn from us, but we will learn from children as well. Just like those elders in the temple were gobsmacked by what they were hearing from Jesus. And Mary was treasuring these things in her heart. It was all part of the learning journey that everybody was on, adult and child together. So, just a few thoughts. I'm sure you will have had lots more at your tables as well. But thinking about how vital children and young people are in our church ecology. And so, growing faith. Growing faith is about changing the culture of the Church of England. That's quite encouraging that you didn't have to give a cynical laugh for quite a long time now. Changing the culture of the Church of England so that we all instinctively put children and young people right at the heart of all we do. Not being an add-on to what goes on in real church. church, not kind of doing a thing and then thinking, oh, what should we do for the children and the families? Can we do anything about that? But instead, all of us, at every event, every new development, every level of the church, is thinking, how can we help children and young people to flourish in this particular venture? And having that, being the person in the room who says, what about children and young people? How can this happen? And that's going to take some time in most dioceses. I don't know your diocese terribly well yet. It feels as if you have a kind of a senior leadership level that really gets that, and that is just such a help when it comes to filtering through principles and structures and practices at all levels of the diocese. But I don't know. Across the Church of England as a whole, we're a million miles away from this, and there's still this attitude of what really matters is the grown-up stuff, because they can join the planned giving scheme. I didn't say that. But children, we'll leave that to the untrained people in the corner, and if we employ children and youth workers, it can be on 5p an hour, because what does this really matter? We've got to change things. We've got to change things. And I really believe that there is a will and a hope and a way of doing this at this moment in the C of E. I love the word hope. It came up earlier in Bishop Andy's comments. In Messy Church on Sunday, I was doing placards of protest to go with the Beatitudes, of trying to change the world for the better. And one 6-year-old, when I said, what would you like to protest about? And, have on your banner, it could be something to change or something to have more of, what would you like? And she just thought, and then she took her banner and she painted on hop. And she ran out of space in the E. So we decided that didn't matter. It was hop. And I just thought, oh yeah, this is what it's hop, hop. So it is a hopeful time in the Church of England at the moment, a hopeful time, if you like. That gives a bit of a Tigger feeling to it, but at the same time there is this energy and this will to really change the culture. So if you're kind of thinking of catching waves of the Spirit, it's quite a good time to be on this particular wave. And the way that we're doing this, the way we're focusing, is enabling churches, households and schools to work together with children, nurturing their spirituality together. In the past there's been amazing work going on in churches, there's been amazing work going on in some Christian households where Christian faith is encouraged in the home, just like it would have been for Jesus, though not enough. And amazing work going on with children in schools, especially Church of England schools. The research that we based Growing Faith on, long before I started, says where those three bodies work together, that's where children's spirituality really has the best chance of flourishing. So that where we're sharing a way forward between a partnership, if you like, between parents and carers, between the school and the church, that's when children's and young people's spirituality really has the best chance of thriving. Why do we need a change in culture? Oh, I find statistics impossible to hold in my head. I think I am functionally inhuman. It's very worrying. It would be very handy to be able to remember everything. Basically, the stats for mission are really, really depressing and going downhill. and however you look at it, it's really, really sad and miserable and very unmotivational. So I'm not going to dwell on that. Let's just say, as Bishop Andy said earlier, there are not enough children connected with churches. However, Monday to Friday, every week, apart from holidays, in Church of England schools alone, there are over 1 million children. I mean, that's phenomenal, isn't it? Over 1 million children we serve in our schools. And so, at the heart of Growing Faith is this question of, well, if that's the case, why don't we stop lamenting about the fact that we don't have children in our church buildings anymore? Why don't we do what Jesus did and go out to where the people are that we're trying to reach? Go out to the schools where those children actually are and meet them there. And that's that's fundamentally what this is all about. Churches, homes, schools, working together, going to where the children are, not sitting mourning about the fact that we no longer have a Sunday school of 3,000 people like we had in the 1950s, and we used to go on a Sunday school trip. And that is so debilitating. And I've had it all through my life in local ministry when I've been volunteering in my own churches. There's always been somebody, a lot older, who said, oh, when I left the Sunday school, there were 50 children every week and we had 65 classes for them. And that time has gone. That time has gone. We're in a new era and we need to think in new ways. We need to be imaginative. We need to be like our little baby with her spatula. We need to look at the situation and think how it could be different, how we could act in different ways, go to where people are. We're trying to bring the voices of children and young people into everything we do. And this listening to children and young people is turning out to be a very healing thing. Well, for adults as well, actually. My colleague Hannah is doing a lot of listening around the networks, and sometimes just giving people space to say what is on their heart can be a real kingdom thing. So we're working with our colleagues in the Archbishop of York's Leadership Awards, AYLA, used to be the Archbishop of York's Youth Trust. We're working with as many people as we can in the networks to really listen to children and young people, and to try to, every step of the way, when we're working on new projects, to try and bring the voice of children and young people into what we're doing. And where it's working well, it's brilliant. And it's actually one of these things where the Spirit of God is chilling. We're just starting to see a change in things. I'll tell you about something in Leicester later. But there we go, there's a few of the values of the church that children and youngsters said they wanted to see in a word cloud there. So, our dream is for things to change. We need to change. We can't keep on doing what we've always done and hope that one day it might work. This is actually a time for change. This is the research that the Growing Faith Foundation was built on. And as I say, this was before I joined. A group of people were thinking and praying and trying to discern what direction we could go in. And this led to discovering some research from the National Institute for Christian Education Research. Do look it up, just do a Google on Faith in the Nexus, Nexus, Faith in the Nexus. It's brilliant, brilliant research, brilliantly presented. They do amazing little animations about valuing children's spirituality, about churches and schools working together, about the importance of parents. They're very short, very digestible, very easy. They're very generous in their output. But they highlight a few things which are really key in churches and schools working together. And I don't know if you can read them from the back there. The top bullet point, a strong relationship between church and school has a strong association with attitudes and behaviours which facilitate faith talk and interactions at home. So, in other words, if churches and schools work together closely, it's more likely to have an impact as children go home. They're more likely to talk about the stuff of faith at home. Flourishing connections between school, home and church nurtures relationships between individuals and these institutions. So again, it's about relationships being built up. It's got some positive relationships between church and school are characterised by, which we'll come on to in a minute, and they do draw out the point that impact can be largely unseen, but is apparent in the significance for church-school families, their connection with the local church. So that idea of connection with the local church, it's a belonging thing. It's families who have no connection otherwise with the local church can develop a sense of belonging to their local church through what they experience with the school, if school and church are working together. Right, another couple of minutes just to pause and digest. This is the third point from that Faith in the Nexus research, just to think about with the person next to you. What they say is positive relationships between church and school are characterised by invitational worship, the celebration of festivals, the minister's presence, and a sense of belonging and connection to the church community and building. Buildings come out as really important, which is really interesting, not just from this research, but from some that are having done in Guildford Diocese as well. The children really have a connection and a need for the church building. Isn't that interesting? So, where do you see any of these happening in your context or elsewhere in the diocese? And would you add anything else to the list while you're at it? So, positive relationships in church and school. 2 minutes, person next to you. Church, home, school, working together. This was some research done a few years back by Urban Saints, where young people, kind of early teens, were asked who or what influences the way you think about faith or religion. Just worth clocking. If we're talking about deep down influences, if we're talking about the gut, what sticks through the transitions of all a child's life, this is what teenagers are saying. Family is the big yellow circle. That's the big influence. Family is absolutely vital. We need to take seriously the power of the family. Faith in the family needs to get some more priorities. We're not good at this overall in the Church of England. I don't think we ever have been. If you look back through literature, I think we've been really rubbish at doing faith at home stuff. When I was thinking about this for myself, I said to my brother, were we a Christian family? Yes, he said. He's an atheist. He said, yes, we were. I said, how do you know? He said, because they made me go to church. I said, yes, well, how else do you know? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, did we ever do anything at home that was about God? No, he said, in kind of, as if I'd asked, did we ever take our clothes off and run down the village? No. Did we ever pray? No. Did we ever talk about God? No. And the only thing that we could think of, apart from going to church, was that
the values that were in our family of my parents' love and loyalty and faithfulness and so on were Christian values, but we never did anything, or were, we never did anything that expressed that at home. And so when we came to have our own children, Paul and I, there was that feeling of, well, what do we do? What do Christians do to bring up their children at home? We've got to make this up because we don't know. We can teach our kids to brush their teeth because our parents did that with us. But what do we do about faith stuff? And I still don't know if we got it right. And the other two really significant circles there, the blue one and the orange one, which are interestingly equal, friends in the blue one, and teachers influence faith. Isn't that interesting? What a responsibility we have to support our teachers in their calling as they teach in our schools. Head teachers, classroom teachers, they are at the front line of this. We need to acknowledge their ministry and support them and cheer them on. We can do that locally, we also need to do it nationally. Bits of research which we'll touch on later about households, we'll get onto that this afternoon, and I'm flicking through, ooh, yes, I really think this is worth labelling. I've mentioned the wave of the Spirit that we're on at the moment, and the mood in the church. I really think we are at a kairos moment if we choose to accept it. It's as if it's one of those moments where God says, use it or lose it. You know, here's an open door. Do you want to go through this door? I'm not going to shove you through it, but if you'd like to go through it, there's some exciting stuff waiting. And it really feels like that in the COE at the moment. That there is a will, that there is a releasing of silly amounts of money, that there is a support and a determination to grow younger and more diverse as a church. And I really think that there is a groundswell of God's Spirit sort of trying to shine out and draw us along this path at the moment, which, of course, I would say we'd be bonkers not to go through that door. So very briefly, what are we doing in the Growing Faith Foundation? We are a very small team. There's 4 of us, 2 of whom are part-time. So it really is a tiny, tiny team. And we're scattered about the country. And we're like a little cog trying to turn some bigger wheels. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to just kind of help things move along, really. And with this idea of churches, households and schools working together with children at the heart, these are the things that we've been tasked with setting up to support that work nationally. We've got 12 hubs, learning hubs, which my colleague Cheryl is looking after, and these are going to be centres of, I won't say centres of excellence, because what we're telling them is, please will you experiment and get it wrong, and just take some risks and fail, and we can learn from those failures. Don't be safe all the time. So, scattered about there in the country, there will be 12 learning hubs, one of which is in your diocese. Hurrah! Which is very exciting, starting later on this year. And we're hoping to generate stories and experience and confidence through what those hubs are doing to grow more diverse, to see how it looks with church and schools and households really being given a chance to work together. Networks are exciting. Oh, there's the hubs. Look, there we go. I don't know if you can see the dots on that map, but they're scattered about the country nicely. Let's go on to programmes. Programmes, the Growing Faith Strategic Leaders Programme is what my colleague Stephen is working on at the moment. This is part of the pathway that we need to reinforce, we need to make stronger for people who are concerned about children and young people in the church, to really feel that this is a career pathway, a calling pathway, if they're doing it as a volunteer, where they will be supported from the get-go, right through to the end of their career. And what we're doing is saying, let's come in at quite a high level to start with, because if you've been a youth worker or a children's worker or a lay minister in the church for some time, there may not be a suitable CPD, continuing professional development for you in your role. Certainly there wasn't much that I could go on when I was in Messy Church. And our colleagues in the parachurch organisations are a vital part of this movement. And so Stephen has developed this Growing Faith Strategic Leaders Programme, which is for all sorts of people. Children's and youth leaders, yes. Children's work advisors, yes. We've got teachers on it, we've got head teachers on it, we've got directors of education on it. We've got all sorts of lay leaders within the church joining us. And if you've got someone in your church who you think might benefit from that, do scan the QR code or have a search or come and find me afterwards and see if it might be possible to get them on the next cohort. We're just trying to grow leaders to do culture change. Networks is what Hannah is working on. We're about connecting communities. So it's about the National Church enabling communities of people to come together and learn from and with each other. And there's some really exciting stuff going on in all sorts of spheres. Ordinands and Growing Faith. We've got chaplains working on quite an imaginative pattern of meeting locally, then meeting nationally, month by month. That's exciting. There's one about people who are interested in listening and responding to children and young people, and that's got some really interesting spin-offs. We've brought the parachurch organisations together so that they can work with us. Hugely generous people wanting the Church of England to succeed in this. So lots of different networks. So if you're thinking, gosh, it'd be brilliant to have a national network on such and such a theme that's something to do with schools, churches, homes working together, talk to us, because Hannah can make that happen if it's going to. I'll talk about research is happening. That's very exciting. We've got a little pot of money for some research projects. Those are just getting going, and we hope to have some results for those by the end of the year. How are we doing? Oh, 1 more minute. What does it look like? Stories. I'm going to finish on a donut story. The donut story. I love this one because it's just, it's got donuts. But it just shows how fragile this thing is, how dependent on relationships, and how, if we give things a chance, wonderful things can happen. So there was a church in a school where historically it hadn't worked. The leaders had fallen out with each other, it hadn't been good. And when the new minister came into the church, just found that there was no relationship with the school at all. And the school didn't want one. They really didn't want one. And so the minister went to the school and said to the head, what do you want us to do for you? What can we do for you? And because of this bad relationship, the head sort of sneered and said, well, you could bring donuts to the staff room every Friday if you want. And instead of kind of taking the hump and saying, is that all you want from us? We wash our feet of you. Instead, the vicar sent in a tray of donuts to the staff room every Friday. And apparently it took 6 weeks before, in the school newsletter, it was, we love working with our local church. What an amazing church. How lucky we are to work with them. Just that attitude of humility for that vicar going in and saying, what can we do for you? Not, this is what we want to give you, but how can we serve you? What can we do for you? Oh, so lots going on, lots of lovely, lovely things going on. Leicester Diocese. Oh, Oxfordshire Diocese, there's so much, so many lovely, lovely things. Peer chaplaincy, oh, so many amazing things. But I'll just leave this slide up over coffee, because this is about dreaming dreams. This is about how might the world be different? How might my parish be different? How might my parish be different on the top of the hill in the Peak District? What if, it's the what ifs to dream about together. What if your local church's centre of gravity was in the school rather than in the church building? What might that look like? What if your diocese asked you, would you like to set up a church in the school? More of this later. And what might be the impact if one of the school staff wore their dog collar to work? What if the school crossing patrol person or the lunchtime supervisor came to work in a dog collar with something recognisable that said, I am from the local church? What difference might that make? Oh, there's so many exciting things. This is just skimming the surface. But after the break, after the coffee break, we'll come back and we'll think a little bit about some of the research and how that might apply to your particular local situation. But as you have coffee, do dream some dreams together.